Hi, I'm here to talk about some history books. I chose some nonfiction books that I particularly love and wanted to share them with you. For those of you who really enjoy history and maybe you haven't really delved into these particular subjects that much in your classes and you want a little more background. I'm starting out in the early 20th century with the family Romanov. Murder, rebellion, uh, and the fall of Imperial Russia. The ruler of Russia is called the Tsar or Emperor. His wife is the Tsaritsa or Empress, and the male heir is the Tsarevich. This is the story of the last Tsar of Russia, his family, and the times he lived in. For all the advantages he had, Nicholas II did not understand the people he ruled or the changing ways of the 20th century, and he had a secret. His son and heir was a hemophiliac, which means that his blood had trouble clotting, and he was close to death many times. So in other words, the family would not continue. He had 4 daughters, none of which would be eligible to replace him. If you're wondering about Vladimir Putin and Russia, and you have questions about the history of Russia, this would be a great place to begin. One of the interesting parts about the author, Candace Fleming, is that this book was written in early 21st century because in 1991, the Russian archives were opened after the dissolving of the Union of Soviet Social Republics. So Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, all of those little pieces of Russia or Soviet Union went off and became independent countries. And the archives were opened up. So we have first-person diaries, letters, things that we've never seen before that add to this story, and I found it fascinating. And one of my favorite people of this time period was a character called Rasputin. Rasputin was considered a holy man, and anyway, especially by the Tsar and the Tsarina, because they were desperate for a cure for their son. And if this holy man was going to bring any relief, they didn't care what he looked like, smelled like, or what he did, disgusting as it was. And so I really wanted to read about what was so hypnotic about him. And this is just a quick thing about what Rasputin did when he saw the Tsarevich, the heir, the young boy. To this day, no one knows. Some historians have speculated that he used his strange, piercing eyes to cast a sort of hypnotic spell over the sick and frightened boy, calming him so the bleeding slowed. Others have suggested that the starets, the holy man, simply had good timing and that he waited until the symptoms had run their course before appearing at Alexei's bedside to take credit for his improvement. Pieces in here about Rasputin, who is actually one of my characters that I really wanted to know about. So the family enough I would highly recommend. Moving on in the 20th century, but not too far away, is In My Hands, Memories of a Holocaust Rescuer. This is an autobiography of Irene Gut-Updike, written with Jennifer Armstrong. Jennifer interviewed her, talked with her, and was able to get the story into a narrative that would really work. And it's brilliant. It's one of my favorite books. Irene is a Polish survivor. She was 17 years old in 1939 when the Germans and Russians from both sides came at Poland and divided her native land. She asked herself, as she's decided to change her life, should I do this? Or how will I do this? Every step of my childhood has brought me to this crossroad. I must take the right path or I would no longer be myself. You must become a resistance fighter, a smuggler of Jews, a defiler of the SS and the Nazis all at once. One's first steps are always small. I had begun by hiding food under a fence. And her works of good escalate until she is able to save 12 Jews in the house that she is living with a German officer. Great, great book. Let's move over to the United States, and something you might not be that familiar with is the Negro Baseball Leagues. But for some of you who love sports, this might be the great book of the history that you would want to know. We Are the Ship, the story of Negro League Baseball, and it's written and illustrated by Kadir Nelson. It's a story of unsung heroes who overcame segregation, hatred, terrible conditions, and low pay to do the one thing they loved more than anything else in the world, play ball. Kadir Nelson has written this in a nonfiction narrative with a character voice, explaining how baseball was back then for Negroes. And he also has these gorgeous oil paintings that illustrate this book. Now, you may feel like the oversize is, oh, this is a kid's book. Well, I don't think the writing is, quite frankly. But I do want to show you some of the beautiful illustrations. This is a picture of Leroy Satchel Paige, the great Negro pitcher. He's actually, this one is taken from Yankee Stadium because he was always on, I can't think of the word I wanted to say, exhibition. Because everyone, whites and blacks, wanted to see him pitch. And believe it or not, he could pitch every single day. That was his job, and he did it, and he loved it, and he was great. Had he been in the major leagues, there would be no one who could touch his statistics. And each one of the chapters is done as an inning, and in the ninth inning, the end of the ball game for the Negro Leagues, is a great picture of Jackie Robinson. And you can see the really warm tones in those pictures. So that is 1947 when Jackie Robinson is brought up into the major leagues. And that is the beginning of the end of the Negro Leagues. Beautiful book, really great history about baseball, lots of interesting characters and people that you might know, but you'll learn more about them. Moving on, in the United States still, we move up to 1964 in the 20th century. Freedom Summer. This is Susan Goldman Rubin's Freedom Summer, the 1964 struggle for civil rights in Mississippi. It's the summer of '64, and young volunteers, mainly from the North, defied segregation by living with black hosts, opening freedom schools to educate children and adults. This was in Mississippi, and canvassing door to door to register voters. Everyone knew there would be risks. But the murders of 3 volunteers, Andrew Goodman, James Earl Turner, unleashed an unstoppable wave of determination from black Mississippians to demand their rights. It's been 50 mark federal legislation. Read how it all happened, some of it day by day. There are pictures of pictures from the news, few illustrations. This particular is a poster when the young men were missing and they were looking for them. Well, the Mississippians weren't looking that hard. And here's a picture from a newspaper clipping of one of the funerals. I highly recommend a real interest in civil rights. But we're going to end up on a fun book. And this takes place in the 21st century. And this is To Timbuktu, 9 Countries, 2 People, 1 True Story. It's written by Casey Sheska, and it is illustrated by Stephen Weinberg. These 2 people, Casey and Stephen, met in their junior year abroad in college in Morocco. They were both in different colleges, but they both spent their time in junior year in college in Morocco and met and kind of fell in love, but without really saying anything because how long were they going to know each other? Would they ever see each other again? Keep it cool. However, they did keep up their relationship, and after college, when they both had graduated, it was like, well, how are we going to stay together? Casey was applying for all kinds of grants and scholarships, and any way she could get back to Europe or overseas. She was so interested in travel and in educational aspects of other countries. So they decided together, after she had won a Fulbright grant to Mali, Africa. It didn't take place for almost a year after graduation, let me say 9 months, that the 2 of them would travel to China and teach English as a second language for a while. Then before they went to Mali, they would go down to Thailand, maybe have a little vacation, then go to Mali. It's funny, it's sweet, it looks huge and big, But to be honest, there's a lot of illustration that Stephen does. I love it. I love the stories. I love their escapades. I also love the fact that they love each other. They're really a sweet couple. And I'm not going to ruin anything because it's not in the book, but they do eventually marry. And Casey Sheska, by the way, is John Sheska's daughter. And they actually have a B&B in the Hudson Valley. So these are my 5 books that are all nonfiction and have a lot of history in them and some interest and some fun. So I hope you take a look at those. Thank you.